Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes, and welcome back to the YoVideogames podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Andrew.
And once again, thank you to all our generous patrons who kept us going for over 350 episodes.
Yeah, if you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. Dude of the week is Andrew H. Thank you,
Wow,
Andrew.
you congratulations. I know, you said H.
Yeah. No,
I'm glad you put that in there. Because
okay.
if you just said Andrew, it would make it seem like you were just trying to toot your own horn, but not our actual dude of the week, Andrew H.
I will toot any horn I like. And I'll tell you what, me and Andrew, we have a connection. You know, we have matching birthmarks, probably. I imagine. I don't know. I fantasize.
On your left butt cheek.
But also,
if you were to have a gaming birthmark, what would it be and where would it be?
God, I mean, obviously you'd want the Triforce, right?
Yeah.
You'd want the Triforce. You'd want it on the back of the hand. But no, I'd probably get like the Ape Escape monkey on like my ass cheek or something, you know, like I wouldn't get something cool.
Luckily, if you did want to have maybe not a birthmark, but a mark of the Triforce on your body, you could totally do that with our sponsor.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, granted, right now, all the rage is their Beard Hedger Pro, but like you could use the Lawnmower 4.0 to get that in the pubes, have a little little surprise for your gaming partner. But if you could do it in your beard, one, wow, you're talented. But two, this would be the tool for it. The Beard Hedger Pro. It's a full kit, comes with everything you need to take care of your beard. You know, you got your fine scissors, your brushes, your combs. But the star of the show is the Beard Hedger itself. And my favorite thing about it is that you can adjust on the fly where the guard sits by increments of like a millimeter or half millimeter. It lets you get a clean fade and layering in your beard. So I did confirm that the spot I was talking about, that I was so impressed with, I was so happy that I finally did, where I was like, oh, I can layer the sideburn into my short ass head hair. Jared, shout out. Thank you for confirming. It is a fade. I wasn't using the wrong term. I am not a dick. But yeah, the Beard Hedger Pros, it's now taken the spot of my favorite thing from Manscaped. I mean, I still love the Boxers 2.0. I still love the lawnmower. And of course the crop preserver, which I need to get more of. But the Beard Hedger Pro is officially, it is my favorite thing that they make. And I genuinely love it. I use it once a week. I keep everything looking clean.
So it's just like raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens.
It is. It is for me. I am quite happy about that. Look, there's not a lot of
things.
There's not a lot of care that can be taken for a guy who is bald or balding and keeps his hair real short. Like, give me the beard. Let me have the beard. I'm happy with the beard. I can take care of my beard now. Thank you, Manscaped. But if you're interested in checking out the Beard Hedger Pro or any of the products like the Boxers 2.0, the Lawnmower 4.0, Solid Classic, please head over to manscaped.com. Use our code YoVG, all caps, for 20% off and free shipping worldwide. That's manscaped.com. Our code is YoVG, all caps, for 20% off, free shipping worldwide. Your balls will thank you.
And now your chinny chin chin.
Now your chin. Yeah, it's Manscaped's going to have to come up with a second phrase. You can't say your balls are going to thank you when you talk about your face.
I know. One of our listeners has said, crown to crotch.
Crown to crotch.
Yeah. So Zyber's, he said that one.
That's a solid one. Yeah. I like tip to taint, but that doesn't work so much for the head.
Yeah.
I guess you could also use this on the chest hair. You could get the trident in the chest, or not the trident, the Triforce in the chest hair. Trident
if you're real into Aquaman, maybe.
Hell yeah. Who isn't? You look at Jason Momoa, you're like, that guy waxes.
That guy's not going to be Aquaman much longer.
Well, yeah, probably not.
That was a funny aside. I don't know if you heard about that, where like they filmed the movie 50 million years ago, right? But like the first test audiences were like, it's solid, right? They're like, it's good, not great, it's solid. And they're like, oh, it's okay. What do we got to make this fucking like the best thing ever. We got to free road this shit. So they went back and did a whole bunch of reshoots and re-edits.
And the audience was like, this is worse.
And then the audience test screens people left, got up and just fucking walked out, which was like always like almost unheard of for a free test screening. They were just like, they hated it. So apparently that movie's in a real fucking bad place.
Oh man.
It went from being like, it's a good movie, it's a decent time, to, oh my God, this is awful, I'm leaving.
You know, the thing is I'm not sure it's Jason Momoa's fault. There's just
No,
too
and
many
like,
cooks in the kitchen.
well, and people have been saying like, his wording and stuff lately has been very much like, guys, I'm just like, a movie will be what it is. I'm being Lobo after this. Like,
Yeah.
like he knows it. We know it. James Gunn knows it. Like, he knows he's just moving on from this. He's going immediately into being Lobo in the new DC universe. So,
Yeah, that's fair. The thing is like, not to shit on Jason Momoa. It's not like he's an Oscar winner, right? He's not Daniel Day-Lewis, but he isn't like a bad actor. There are bad actors out there that
yeah, I
make
mean, Aquaman could have honestly gone so much worse for
right,
and a shitty actor.
He has enough charisma that he carried that DC movie in the charisma-less years, the years where like Zack Snyder was trying to make all of them have as little personality as possible. It seemed like. Yeah, that's my own personal opinion. I don't know if that's accurate to the comics. I didn't read all the comics. I'm not, super deep into it, but it feels like your main character should have just a little bit. I'm not saying they have to be likable. I argue against likable main characters all the time. Your main character. I mean,
he made a good Aquaman, but it's also like the guy is Lobo.
Like, right. He is perfect for that.
Like, this man could carry a Lobo film so fucking hard. Like,
who would you cast as Aquaman now? Like, if
man,
you're going to make another Aquaman, who are you going to cast?
I actually
why is it Pedro Pascal? Come on,
I might go Liam Hemsworth.
Liam Hemsworth, he's going to be Solid Snake. He's going to be. I don't
Oscar
know.
Isaac's going to be Solid Snake.
I read at one point that he was in the running. I don't know if he actually is.
I think Oscar Isaac's number
Oscar
one.
Isaac is now currently the guy that's at the top of the list.
I know he's taking over for The Witcher, but
that's right. Liam Hemsworth is taking over for The Witcher too. He's had a rough run of it. I think he's sort of gotten. He keeps having these like great roles to break out, and then they sort of become middling.
Yeah.
Like Hunger Games, everybody thought was going to be his huge breakout role, but he didn't really break out the way people
in that movie.
Yeah, he plays the love interest. He's the
I didn't even know
the hunky love interest to be.
Seen the first one? I think it's the only one I saw.
Yeah, he's in it.
Oh, I don't remember.
Yeah. I don't know.
Very, very little about that movie.
Yeah, it's you don't remember the big zeitgeisty debates between the soft boy PETA and Hunk Gale?
I mean, I
remember that shit? That was like an internet thing.
I remember it was a little tonally weird because it was almost post-apocalyptic with like people like really living in the woods off the land, and then they go to the city, which is like completely fucking Fifth Element. And then they get dumped into the beat, and then it turns into Battle Royale, like the movie Battle Royale a bit. And it's just like everything's just about like this. It's sort of like a big, the whole class system thing or whatever.
Right.
I was like, I get what you're going for, but like, I don't know, like sometimes this sounds so hypocritical for me, but like, it almost seems like tonal whiplash a bit, or artistic whiplash, between like, because I get what they're going for with the whole Fiddler's Green kind of thing.
Right. And I'm not going to argue that it's, amazing story. It's not an insane, but it is, there's a good amount of like, it is thematically on point the whole time. It is a class.
Yeah, the theme is on point. It's just the art direction is almost weird to me, but I think it was intentional. And right. I say I'm a hypocrite because I play fucking Xenoblade 2, which is nothing but artistic whiplash like every 5 minutes, but
the whole point of the game, really.
But yeah, it's just, and I'm not even saying that it's bad. It's just, that's what I remember. I just remember the art direction being everywhere in that movie.
Right. Yeah, I guess I'd have to go back and watch the movies, but I read the books in high school. I don't remember when I read I don't remember when the books came out. They came out a while ago, right? The movies are 10 years old now. I'm fucking old. But speaking of old and disappointing
and whiplash.
and whiplash,
Let's talk about tonal whiplash today.
let's talk about G4 because a little
Yeah.
bit of backstory. So we did a side quest for those of you that aren't patrons, that ended up turning into like a 45-minute thing, all about Yoshi P's comments, like, is he calling you racist? And in response to that, some dudes, we did this just before all of the G4 clips started
Yeah.
going around, and
Which
some
to
dudes were
me
sending
was
it to
just
us.
like, oh, how vindicative was it for me? Because I'm saying like he's talking about the press.
Right, yeah, and here's example after example after example. And then there were two key responses. One, you had Morgan Webb, who was kind of like, yeah, the writers, we were all fucked up. And then you had Adam Sessler, the other half of that show, who was just doubled down, fuck you all. So
Yeah.
you read his responses. I didn't read his response. I don't follow him. I can't remember why I don't follow him.
I mean, he's practically a politician, and like he avoids the whole central thing they're asking about, and kind of keeps twisting the narrative back to like, oh, you're just, you're being basically you're just being salty because of my opinion. You're just trying to like jump on dogpile me, and like and he even went so far as to say like the people who were dogpiling him were like alt-right trolls who were trying to
Oh yeah,
James Gunn him.
what is James Gunning?
So
Oh, is
like
that all the people that got mad about him taking
they got him
over?
fired for a bit because they were literally like you weaponizing the whole offensive
Oh
bit, like
yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah, yeah.
digging up James Gunn's past to use against him to get Disney to fire him, even though James Gunn had literally publicly apologized years like it was like James Gunn did something 10 years ago. 5 years ago he had a huge apology saying like I made some really fucking inappropriate jokes. And
Right.
then present comes along, and alt-right trolls tried to basically get him fired because they dug up his jokes from 10 years ago that he had apologized for 5 years ago, and actually got him fired because like Disney execs pay
How
attention
sad
to
is
this
it
shit.
that there's so many scandals constantly that I forgot all about this until you brought it up right now? Like,
Well, that's the thing is that James Gunn threaded that needle very carefully. He didn't say much. He kind of like let it thing. Batista went to bat for him. And everyone else, who wasn't just, people involved in the situation were kind of like, well, yeah, he did say fucked up shit, but then he apologized for it, halfway between then and now. Like he knows, like he's already kind of did. I'm like, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, Disney, you're a bunch of fucking hypocrites when it went for James Gunn, because I'm like, you still fucking you still hire Tim Allen and Robert Downey and stuff. I'm like, those guys were nothing but heavy drug users. Like,
yeah, but Robert, I don't know about Robert. I don't know anything about Tim
well,
Allen.
he
I
had
know
his
he used to sell drugs. I know Tim Allen was
he had his redemption arc, is my point,
right.
right?
Yeah,
Like Tim Allen had a fucking rough go in the 90s. He had his redemption arc, and now he's fucking Buzz Lightyear, right? And he's in there making Toy Story 5. And Robert Downey Jr., he had a rough go, and then he came, he sobered up and became Iron Man. Like I'm like, you can't fucking like, oh well, these guys have a spotty past, we can't work with them again. It's like,
yeah. And as far as I know, though, Robert Downey Jr. was never a shithead. He was just a drug addict.
well, I
Which
mean,
I guess depending on where you are in the country, that's the same thing.
yeah, well, sure, whatever. That's kind of like, I mean, my point still is like, I mean, you hear Tim Allen stand-ups or anything like that, and it's
Right.
just kind of like,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, sure, right? You'll get him on for Toy Story 5, right? So it's like, it was always like
Fair.
a really stupid thing, like to begin with, and I think that because here's the thing, I've said this on my stream, and I'm going to say here, never trust a person without regrets. If someone never regrets anything they've ever said or done, I don't know that I would trust that person. Because to be 100% honest with, in regards to this situation here,
Means they've never thought about it.
I would say, well, in my own personal life and the things we've done, I absolutely 100% regret some of the jokes I made.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I regret it, for even as far as like a media person or whatever. But, we could go back even further. And if we go back to when I was 18, 19-year-old coming out of a heavily indoctrinated, religious upbringing, I 100% regret many things I thought when I was 18, 19. Many things I said, many many jokes I made at, just holy shit, like when these G4 clips are fucking old, right? They're from
Yeah.
2006, they're from 2005, they're from 2000, that's a long time ago now. We're getting close to 20 years ago, and it's like you should probably definitely regret some of the things you thought or said, when you go past the 15-year mark. I wouldn't double down on them at all. Like if someone pulled up something I said, you said something that was like, pretty fucked up or hateful sounding,
Early
you
2000s is
know,
probably homophobic.
yeah, I'd be like, yeah, that was pretty awful. That was not okay. Like and that's I think that's the where it kind of fucked up here was that the doubling down part where it's like, okay, well, I would have looked at that clip, from the Bite and Kaidos Origins review and just been like, yeah, that was fucked up. We shouldn't have done that.
Right, and that's sort of the weird thing, like, in the early 2000s, I think because the internet was still young, which is weird to think about it now, because at the time, the internet was kinda like, you had to argue hell, my freshman year of high school, I had to argue why the internet was something you needed in the house.
Hmm.
Right? It was like 2007, 2008 was when like I first really got to start doing, online multiplayer because internet was seen as important
Yeah.
enough to have speeds and stuff. Um, you don't have exposure to people. You don't like you know 100 people that you go to school with and see and stuff, but you don't have the exposure that we had to. If you want to tell me that like you have no regrets or no regrets not even the word. Like if you haven't grown up enough to know that like you just didn't know shit 20 years ago. And in 20 years we'll say the same thing about today, but that you
Right.
didn't know shit 20 years ago. Yeah, that's a red flag. I think it's why when Morgan Webb goes like, yeah, hey, that was fucked up. Nobody's sitting there. Well, at least I don't know of anybody sitting there
Hmm.
riding her and deriding her. Um, you know, maybe it's just because doubling down is always it just shows that like you don't care, I guess, or that
Well,
you
I think
don't.
it's a bit of a narcissism thing where it's just like you don't want to accept that you fucking did something bad, you
Right.
know? Because
Yeah.
I don't know, there's a weird thing where some people just like don't want to be seen as, I might have been involved in something that was like potentially racist, and it's like, bro, like the shit like teenagers like us were when we were teenagers, the shit we said, which we thought was just a
Edgy.
joke, just a fun, just edgy.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, like that. No, I would look back, I would slap myself.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I went to Catholic school, so that just a bedrock of bullshit there. But um I think that like what we're getting at here is that when you look at media in general, but gaming media specifically, G4 wasn't the worst of it. They were totally normal. They were even probably considered fucking vanilla.
Yeah,
Like
they were,
G4
if
wasn't
anything,
exciting or edgy for the
they
time.
were the normies. They were like the
Right.
mainstream, right? Of
Right.
game
Not
coverage.
excusing it, not saying that Adam Sessler's right, but at the same time, it's like the early 2000s were fucking weird. And now Jinko jeans are coming back. Like we've learned nothing. We're bringing those jeans back. We're
Saw
bringing
that the
back
other
those
day.
parachute
Someone was
pants
wearing like giant baggy pants, jeans, and I
rolled
was
up
like,
high on the ankle. I was like,
"Fuck."
what the fuck? Why are you so sweaty? Um, but the I think one thing that we can like get into about say G4, um, compare it to other media entities, gaming
Yeah.
media, where it's like we get this idea that one, gaming media is a monolithic entity.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a problem, I would say, with people are kind of around. I think a lot of people tend to sort of like, oh, anyone that's a game journalist. Now that's even gotten even worse now because they've dug up this shit. Where now people are just like gaming media people are just gaming media journalists are racist. It's like, no. But that was some fucking racist shit coming out of the reviewers' mouths on G4 back in the day.
Yeah,
Um,
and there's also, it's sort of dumb to have to say, but like there's those shitty lazy jokes that they're making very clearly racially motivated, isn't the same as like fucking Jim Crow laws. Like it's not the same. It's not on
Right,
the
because they're
same
not
level.
they're not in positions of power, kind of like,
Right.
suppressing someone.
But it was socially acceptable at the time. Not saying that that makes it right, but it was like it was the socially, and no one batted an eye at it. It's not like today where there's, again, we have so much interconnectivity over the internet. You might actually know someone actually hurt by those jokes, which
Mhm.
isn't, it's a good thing that we are now aware of other people. But at the time, again, early 2000s, fuck crazy. It was insane. I mean, MySpace was dominating. Fucking
Yeah.
MySpace refused to buy Facebook because they thought Facebook wouldn't hack it. Facebook tried to Zuckerberg tried to sell Facebook to MySpace for $75 million, and MySpace was like, nah. This is weird, crazy times early in the internet. People were still pocketed in a way that jokes like that could absolutely thrive in an environment where you might not know any Japanese people. And so it's not that you didn't know
Mm.
that those jokes were wrong. It's that you didn't know anybody that you had to look in the eye when saying those jokes, or uh, when laughing at those jokes. You didn't see any of the hurt. You didn't see any of the harm, so it didn't matter. It was fucking whatever, off into the sky. Um, and I think early internet is punctuated by that. Where like early YouTube, look at the types of joke videos that did really well early YouTube and stuff. Again, not excusing it, but explaining that the environment of the time it wasn't like it is today. Something that I like and also hate about Gen Z, and I'm not saying this to hate on Gen Z, is Gen Z forgets that there was a time before them. Sometimes they do, where they'll like, they just look at Gen Z film criticism of older movies or older media and set like, it's weird watching their reactions to things. Go do that. Go down that rabbit hole.
I mean, we
You can
know
see
people
TikTok.
who really almost cannot watch a film made before 1980.
Right. There's a whole yeah, but there's like a whole thing with Gen Z where they are deeply uncomfortable with any type of sex scene in a movie. They want them all removed. All sex scenes from any movie should be gone. And it's like, that's a weird as fuck position. But apparently it's totally normal for Gen Z to be like, yeah, we want all sex scenes are weird and we want them all gone. I was like, well, you probably shouldn't be watching
What?
rated. Yeah, it's all over TikTok and shit. It's weird. Um, it's like a weird moralism that's spiking.
Right. Well, because everything has to be measured and balanced, and we try to be measured and balanced. And I've watched this happen a lot where, okay, so going back to G4, they used to have like hottest babe segments.
Yes.
Top,
Jeez.
the top 10 hottest babes, and that happened all the time because they were a fucking frat house, right? And now we when a good example would be like, say, Mortal Kombat, right? Mortal Kombat 11 has much different character designs than, say, even Mortal Kombat 9
Right.
from 2009 or I'm sorry, 2011.
You
So
just got to look at the new Cammy design. She's still hot as fuck, but she
right,
isn't in a one piece.
right. So like, I mean, like the girls in Mortal Kombat 9 were basically fighting with tissue paper for a costume.
Yeah.
Like 3 strips
As
of
God
tissue
intended.
paper.
I don't know why everybody.
But Mortal Kombat 11, they actually give them like costumes, like actual varied different costumes, right? And some people are like, oh, it's censorship, they're covered up or whatever, blah blah blah, and that's like a whole nother ball of wax. But like, part of me is just kind of like, I'm like, look, we don't need it, so it's like anyone who's a female has to be in battle armor bikini, right? I think it's fine in a game like Golden Axe when the dude's running around with literally just like an animal pelt covering his junk and that's it. And the chick's running around in a bikini and I'm like, okay, whatever. They're all fucking naked. Like
Exiles.
That's right. That's fine. And I think that's I would even argue, okay, whatever. Like for the art of that game, that is appropriate. They want to have like just naked people naked, ripped, buff people run around. Cool. When you're talking about like, say, something along the lines of Mortal Kombat, it is kind of like I don't know. To me, it's very noticeable when okay, everyone's kind of got like these cool martial arts fantasy inspired costumes. What are the chicks wearing? Bikinis or very skimpy whatever. Where it's just kind of like it's very kind of like obvious that like okay
How
like
can you stretch your hamstrings if you have any kind of fabric over them all? It's why I only work out in Speedos.
so I kind of get that aspect, but then you get to the part where it's like anytime oh, if a female is wearing even something kind of resembling a midriff, it's terrible. Like because now we've kind of
The
gone in that
pendulum
direction where it's
swings.
like
Yeah,
the
no.
pendulum has swung so far in the other direction. Now we get to this point now where it's just like, oh, anyone that's even showing even a remote amount of skin, like now you start sounding like Puritans in the 1920s or 1910s,
Right.
where it's just kind of like, oh my god, her ankle showing. This is sexist design. It's harmful. It's harmful to human society. It's like, okay, calm the fuck down.
Millennials really are kind of like the middle forgotten stepchildren where like we got to live in those wild ass times where like truly the internet was a wild west. You might be browsing looking at fucking I don't know, an entire blog devoted to collecting Tonka trucks, and at the bottom of it get a link to maybe the worst porn you've ever seen in your entire life. It's you really, and there was no protection. There was no antivirus really strong enough. The antivirus itself was giving you viruses. Like
Oh yeah,
you
like
really had to learn shit. Um,
anyone susceptible to getting a meat spin link.
oh my god, yeah. Uh, it's just sort of weird because now uh, there's a little bit of like an I don't know. I feel like millennials are down for anarchy. like just let everything be alone. Let everything crumble. But going back to what I was getting at about the like monolithic thing, where it's like it's easy to look back on writers, you know, 20 years ago, 15, 16 years
Well,
ago, and go, oh yeah, that thing is like that now. G4 of today is the well, yeah, there is no G4 today, but the G4 of today is the same G4.
mhm.
Obviously not. One of the biggest complaints about the new version of G4 was that it had swung to like sort of a lifeless commercial aspect. I don't know if
Right,
it's
and
accurate. I didn't
and
watch
that
it
kind of
like
well,
everybody else.
that kind of like kind of goes into the sort of like I would say central idea we're talking about this episode where it's like, well, what do you do for something that's like a more of a TV show like network style thing? Like what the fuck do you do in regards to content nowadays, right? Because like
Because
the
YouTubers are
original
just doing it better than you
right.
can.
Well, right. Because so G4 originally was just kind of like, we know we're going after horny 20-year-olds, males, specifically, straight 20-year-old males. I mean, it was like,
Because a lot of gamers at that time, that is exactly who they were.
right. So they were kind of just going after like the biggest audience, right? And now it's like gaming obviously blew up. Everyone of every type, plays video games, enjoys video games, and that's the way it should be.
Right.
So it's like, okay, so how do you cover that? You can't cover everything in for every, just thinking of the genres that exist in gaming today. How do you as a network cover that? I'm like, how you don't? And that kind of goes back to the whole problem that started the whole thing with Yoshi P's statement, where it's like before they were going after horny 20-year-olds. So the people who wrote for the network, the people who didn't play games, or the people who anyone who worked for G4 in the past that did
Mostly
play
man children, right?
right, who did play video games they were not interested in JRPGs, let alone they would not have been interested in visual novels that come out today, right?
Right.
Like that kind of stuff. It's like
I
visual novels, dating sims. That's just like so fucking far removed. And not even I don't even mean dating sims for guys. I mean, there are dating sims for girls or just romantic visual novels for ladies that actually get brought out here now. No one
well,
at G4 would have ever wanted to cover that. And if they did, you thought it was racist before. Shit, dude, they would have looked like the pilot of the Enola Gay, reviewing, a visual novel aimed at women back then.
something that I think is true of all writers' rooms and stuff and staffs in general is that like hires like
Yeah.
very often. And so it's hard to like when you go if you're a fan of Polygon, or Kotaku or whatever, maybe there's one writer that you just sort of agree with. This is how I say like you should treat all critics or reviewers or even YouTubers. Find the writer or reviewer or whatever that has similar tastes to you, because all critiquing is bullshit. I mean, someone who knows how the thing is made and understands is going to give you better information, but it is still all bullshit. It's all opinions, so find the person that tends to have opinions along your lines, and that's whose reviews you should trust, because they'll probably align with what you want out of a game. Well, when G4 was around, yeah, they were hiring a bunch of man children because that's who they were targeting, and they were writing jokes that they thought, a 20-year-old going to a state university wanted to see, to get them to buy the new Xbox or buy whatever. Because again, this all comes down to getting you to buy shit. That's all of that stuff is advertising. All of it has to be. That's how they feed themselves. But we think of like Polygon or Kotaku as like a monolith, because there is also a big drive by those platforms so that you don't know who is actually writing or making the content.
And this was worse like 10 years ago. Where I personally knew about media outlets, Western gaming media outlets that specifically did not want names to be associated with previews, reviews, editorials, whatever.
Right. They don't want you to build a following, because then you have negotiation power. And they don't want you going against the party line, because then, you say something too honest and all of a sudden Polygon has to worry about ever getting that business again, getting those ad bucks again, whatever. So it is something where like, it's their own fault that they're viewed as monoliths. They did do that on purpose, create this image of like, it's not blah, blah, blah writer with this opinion. It's all of Kotaku with this opinion. But at the same time, it is easy to forget that those people move on. And so holding, modern writer number one from Kotaku against a dude who was writing there 10 years ago, sort of shitty. Like, you can't
not the same thing.
Yeah, you can't compare it. Now, shitting on Adam Sessler for things he said 20 years ago that he refuses or, refuses to accept or doubles down on now. Absolutely. Same dude. Go ahead.
Yeah. And that's kind of the thing to me. It was just kind of like, I don't know how you don't look at, some of the clips that came out and just go like, yeah, that was fucked up. Like, I wish I didn't say that.
It's something that we've talked about before, and hopefully we're not talking about too much, but like gaming journalism, gaming media was born sort of totally different than most other magazines and newspapers and stuff like that, or radio shows. Whereas like those other magazines were born because they had an audience that also loved it. Your fucking your auto trader or whatever. And then advertisers, they hunted down advertisers to advertise in, Auto Trader magazine. But like, it started genuinely out of an interest or an audience. The audience.
It's also crazy when you think about like William Randolph Hearst, right?
Right.
And Hearst had power. He had power over public narrative.
He started the Spanish-American War, probably.
Probably, right? So you have someone like that, but then you have these gaming magazines. They don't have any power. And in fact, they're almost at the mercy of the industry they're covering.
And most of them, not all of them, but a lot of them were born out of the advertising arms of those gaming companies.
Yeah, I mean, everyone loves, this nostalgic for Nintendo Power, but Nintendo Power was a Nintendo-owned magazine.
Right. It was just one big advertisement for Nintendo products. You weren't going to get an honest, review of a Nintendo game out of Nintendo Power.
I remember there was like one dissenter at the time of Nintendo Power who like didn't think Ocarina of Time was the greatest game ever made, and like, even everyone was just kind of like, what the fuck? And they're like, well, he didn't like it, but they still gave it like a 9.7 or whatever the fuck they gave the game.
Right. Yeah. That 1 point. Oh God.
It was like,
really dragged it down.
He dragged down like a percentage of a point or whatever. And then like, even the readers at the time were like, well, why did he not give it a perfect score? And I'm like, oh my God.
Well, they can't all be Tips and Tricks owned by Larry Flint.
Which
uh,
I still can't believe.
floated by
This
porn
still
money, so
kind
he
of
could be
blows my
honest.
mind.
Well, I was trying to think of like, I tried to think like, oh, could I go find a tips and tricks and see in hindsight how like actually honest they were or
I'm
how
gonna
much
say
they were.
probably I at the time that I can think of, one of the most honest magazines was probably, and they probably weren't. They probably were. They're probably just as beholden to advertising dollars as anyone else. PlayStation Magazine, PSM.
Right.
Because they would have their own custom covers, usually drawn by like Adam Warren or someone like
Well, they
that.
were independent for a
Um,
long time, right? They were like
yeah, they
the
were an
only.
independent magazine, and
Yeah.
like there was,
They're my
and
favorite mag.
what made me kind of respect PSM was like someone was like, I want to get into RPGs, but I hate turn based. I don't really want to like take turns fighting things. It's really boring to me. Like, what's a good action RPG? And they're like, well, there's Brave Fencer Musashi, and there's this. Like, they said, honestly, if you want the best of the best as far as action RPGs goes, you should just probably play the Zelda games on the N64.
Right.
And that's how I knew. I'm like, okay, so this magazine is actually kind of honest, where they're like, look,
Well,
if you want the best of this subgenre, you're gonna have to just go to the other guy, like, because they got that covered more than we do.
oddly enough, nowadays, because gaming has exploded the way it has, if magazines were still relevant, which I know they're not particularly relevant anymore, it is actually easier to be totally unbiased and independent because there's so much periphery. There's so many products geared towards gamers now that have
Yeah,
nothing to do with gaming companies that you could float a business by not taking money
yeah,
from Nintendo, from PlayStation, from Xbox. You could just have nothing but Monster Energy ads and G
yeah. That's
Fuel and
that's actually
fucking
an interesting point to think about now. Is that like, because gaming magazines and gaming websites and everything are sort of like they were so fucking tied to game advertisements from other game companies,
right.
where it's like nowadays it's like, yeah, you could have G Fuel, or
Right.
like you said, Monster Energy.
You could survive without it. The one thing that they'll try and screw you on is review copies and stuff like that. But, you know,
Not being beholden to advertising a game, so you can just kind of review it and not worry about the repercussions, probably would have done a lot more for gaming media outlets in general at the time.
it also probably would have led to more sales for games because the ones that are honestly good would have probably gotten better scores, and the ones that are honestly bad probably would have gotten bad scores, so there would have been less competition. One of the
Yeah,
problems with gaming magazines of that time, gaming media in general of that time, and this actually feeds into the, Bat and Kaidos and why JRPGs in particular got shit on. At least this is my own theory. This is just my recollections of the time. But because you had to accept money or you had to get favors from gaming companies to get that stuff, you didn't want to review their stuff badly. You always looked like a shill. You had to find who you were going to shit on to look like you had taste.
yeah.
And Japanese companies at the time, especially, were the least likely company to try and buy you off.
Hmm.
I don't know if that's changed. It probably has changed. I mean, Sony's now basically an American company in terms of its games division, but
Yeah,
um, you know, so it was easy to pick on the guys that you didn't interact with a whole lot. That's, just how it was. And in hindsight, you're like, wow, that was fucking dumb. But at the time, there was probably an argument in some boardrooms about, well, who are we going to say is shit? If we're saying everything is good, what's our opinion worth? And critics think
hmm,
like that. And that's why critics probably aren't very well liked by anybody who makes things. Not to say that there aren't good critics. There are good critics. A good critic is someone who has made and has done, and their critiquing is constructive as well as instructive. But a lot of critics, especially on the internet, have no fucking idea. And that's why critics get shit on as much as they do.
yeah. Like, if you were running a media outlet today, I think the best thing you could honestly do would be to have, like, kind of do what EGN did, and you have four people give a small review each about a game.
Right.
But even like, so, like, you're doing a video, right, of a review, and they're like, hey, we're reviewing this game. I'm trying to I keep going back to the JRPG because that's the hot topic, but it's like, Like someone came up to me and is like, "Hey, we're reviewing Star Ocean 6." And he was like, "Here's Matt's review," right? And like, what does Matt love recently has loved, because EGM used to do that, like where they're like recent favorites. It would show you that, like they would do a little mini profile of every reviewer before you got to the review pages, and they would say like what they're currently playing, what their current favorites,
which is how you should do it.
Which is really good. It's like, what is Matt like? Matt loves Xenoblade, and he had an affinity, he had like, I kind of like this and he kind of like that. And like, what did Matt dislike? Da 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 da. And so, like, showing what RPGs I liked, RPGs I didn't like,
right?
And then now here's this review for say Star Ocean 6, and how does it go? And I'll be like, well, it was this, it was that, So, but going into it, you already knew. I'm like, okay, so what does he like? What does he dislike? What is he looking for? Because what I'm looking for might be different from what you're looking for. And that's why you have 4 people. So there's 3 other people who may have different likes, dislikes of the genre. And they would be like, well, he didn't get this out of it, but what, I really appreciated this aspect. So, because the thing is like when you're playing a game, like there's different reasons you might be doing it. It's like for Gran Turismo 7 for particular, it'd be like, well, what people play that game for the simulation like aspect. People want to have, like, some people, like, I love the aspect of like racing and grinding and accruing money and building my way up. I love the build up. I like starting from nothing and building my way up to another thing. And there'll be
I like
people like
customizing my car.
Right. And then I'll be like, I just want to run people off the road. I just want to cause vehicular manslaughter. Like, I got nothing out of this.
Rush.
Right. I got nothing out of this game. And they're like, okay, well, then you immediately know from the beginning, like, okay, well, I shouldn't be reviewing Gran Turismo ever anyways, but like, if I just was like, I just want to drive sports cars, and this game takes a very long time before it lets you drive sports cars, I don't know. It felt like to me there was too much filler before I got to what I wanted. That's what I was looking for the game. So then someone who watches the review can go like, well, I like the building your your money up, building like the RPG aspect of like building towards it. So, and they say it's really good. I think I'll trust the opinion of the guy who likes what I like. And if someone else was like, what, I just want to drive fancy cars too, and he's telling me it takes forever to get it, maybe I won't get it this time. So,
and I do think that that's something especially frustrating about like gaming. They're not magazines, they're websites now, but like those sort of outlets now, your Polygons, your Kotakus, they're not actually gaming focused anymore. If you go and look at them, half the time you'll see whatever the new TV show is, whatever the movie is, have just as much coverage as any of the new games. They're like a culture outlet now. And I'm not saying that that's bad. It's just one thing that was true back then.
They occasionally dive into the weird. Remember, what was it, like our first, second, one of our earliest podcasts, we talked about like sort of underground, fan-driven, fan-funded industry of adult gaming.
Yes.
And Kotaku tried to cover it, but they literally posted the images in their article, and it's like, why would you do that?
Don't do that.
Especially when it was for Harry Potter characters.
I do sort of think that there is still room out there to compete with the Kotakus and Polygons by just doing hardcore niche gaming, like just gaming and none of the other shit.
I mean, I think you can be fascinating.
But you're not going to make billions.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like you can be fascinating for some people, but that's why I'm fascinated when people bring up like TurboGrafx games, because I have like fucking no knowledge of this system.
Right.
I know very little about it but it had a ton of games and it was actually successful in Japan, but it's like this complete enigma to me as an American. So I'm actually fascinated when I see someone covering an old TurboGrafx game, because I'm just like, this is a whole video game ass system that's like better, more powerful than a Nintendo, somewhere kind of like a Genesis, but not as powerful, but like in that realm. And it's like, this whole thing just fucking like passed me by.
Right.
Either didn't release here or released like 10 copies here. Nobody owned it, kind of thing. So it's like lost gaming. I love that shit.
Well,
I found it very hard to have other people who are like, hey, did you know there's this crazy old TurboGrafx? Oh, fuck, who cares?
Right. Well, I was going to say like AVGN. AVGN is sort of a perfect microcosm of early YouTube gaming, right? Where he was
Yeah.
specifically focused in, retro, just like really drilled down into gaming niche culture, right? If AVGN happened today or like started today, how different would they be in order to compete? When he started doing niche gaming, just general, like, or not general, but just like super specific content, that was sort of the perfect thing to do because no one else was doing it, really not like that. But also because that's what did well with the algorithms of the time, right? Hyper
Yeah.
specific. Now AVGN would have to also do, I don't know, Last of Us TV show content and, and maybe, okay, yeah, that's game adjacent. But then he would have to cover whatever the new Marvel movie is, because he's trying to capture a much bigger audience than what he started as. I think that's what's happening to games, right? The same thing that's sort of happening to YouTube, where YouTube is forcing you to play a new game every 2 years, say, maybe every 3 years, I guess. Gaming journalism, a lot of it is now just media journalism. It's not
Yeah.
gaming specific anymore. And we have this weird thing where it's like now we have writers, people graduating with journalism degrees or with writing
Yeah.
or dev experience who want to be specifically gaming journalists who can't be niche gaming journalists because all those platforms are media general, shit. Whereas back in 2006, 2007, most of the people writing in gaming journalism did not want to be gaming journalists.
Right.
We're
Yeah.
not interested in that. It was a stepping stone to getting a real job at wherever,
Well, like going back though, like because you make a good point about like there definitely was a lot of people who like it was like it was beneath them, like a last resort to like
Right.
write as a journalist for a gaming publication or whatever back then. But like,
And not all of them. There were some there. I mean, I'm sure there was many actually that they were
yeah,
journalists who loved gaming and, they were good at what they did. But there was a healthy amount of them that didn't want to be there.
here's an interesting question: how do you today avoid the pitfalls that Sessler finds himself in now? Like, what is something that can be learned from the sort of like absolute
Oh yeah.
fuckery of 2006?
I can hear no, I can give it. You don't have to have an opinion.
Hmm.
This is yeah, how do you avoid controversy? You don't have to have an opinion. You don't know what you're talking about? Shut the fuck up. You don't know the backstory? Shut the fuck up. You said some wild shit back in the day and people are pointing it out now. It's not the worst idea to just shut the fuck up. Just shut up. just don't say anything. Granted, it would be nice if you were like, hey, yeah, that is fucked up. And I have grown. I have changed in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Here are some examples. Sure. If you can do that, great. If you can't do that, or for whatever reason, you don't think you need to, stop talking. Just don't say anything. That's all you got to do. Yeah, you'll get some hate, but people will forget about you because you're not talking. It's I honestly, and I don't really pay attention to Adam Sessler all that much, but it seems like he digs most of his holes because he can't not have an opinion. Well, there's a lot of things I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, so I don't have an opinion. There's a lot of things I'm not interested in, so I don't have an opinion. Adam Sessler has never met a thing that he doesn't have an opinion on. And so he digs himself hole after hole, saying shit that I'm not even sure he believes.
Yeah. Yeah. And Max was talking about this like when we were on stream on Sunday, because I was playing Rogue Galaxy, if you remember that
Yeah.
PS2 game.
Hell yeah.
And then someone kind of was like, brought up the whole subject because it's an action JRPG. And
Mhm.
Max is just like, here's the thing, I just don't talk about them. Like he's like, because people are like asking me like, what do I think? I'm like, I don't know. When people ask me about how I feel about a genre, I just say like, I don't play it. I don't know.
Yeah, well,
I'm just-
it's sort of what I've always said, where it's all like, hey, those aren't the games for me, so don't take my opinion. Don't take like it's a turn-based RPG. It's got a lot of grinding. It's the thing that it is exactly what I will not enjoy. So do not fucking listen to me about it.
I think I think there can be a bit of a flip side where it's like you do play some, but then you get mad at people who suggest you play another, and then it's like, don't talk to me. That's not my thing, bro. You just play.
Oh,
You
well,
just
yeah.
fucking did that. Like, well, excuse me, what?
Well, my perfect example for me personally is I streamed 2 Yakuza games,
Yeah.
and I was sort of like burnt out on Yakuza. I was like, okay, I'm
Yes,
done
you
for a
probably
while.
shouldn't play them back to back at all.
You
Definitely
should
shouldn't.
not. That is absolutely true. And after I played the second one, I was like, okay, I'm burnt. Other people were like, yeah, you shouldn't have done that. But I would get people who would be like, hey, if you really liked Zero, you should play this. Or if you liked this, you should play this. And I was like, yeah, they're not typically what I want to play. So I'll do it sporadically, but I also like I'm
Mhm.
burnt out for a while on it. That's generally how I put it. Because one, I'm not going to be an unbiased opinion on one. No streamer is unbiased in their opinions. If you're
Mhm.
going to a streamer for their unbiased opinions, I don't know what to tell you. That's a bad idea. There, it takes a lot of work to be unbiased, and nobody's going to stream something they hate constantly, except for Call of Duty streamers and Warzone too. But shade.
That is a whole nother subject, but it's a good subject about like people who've kind of like dug their niche so hard that they literally can't
They can't
play in
go
it because their
anywhere.
audience won't let them go anywhere unless they like want to lose their audience
Well,
completely.
it's not even just about your audience. When all you're good at is this one niche,
Mm,
then you switch to a different game or a different genre, God forbid, and you're just middling or, again, God forbid, bad.
bad.
That's how you lose your job. So they keep playing this game that they hate, and they keep whining about this game that they hate. And, unlike other games, Call of Duty does not need its streaming community. Call of Duty,
Yeah.
like
No.
other
Yeah.
games, need streamers to get the word out, need streamers to like it, and so can and often do cater their shooters or whatever
Hmm.
to the streamers, not necessarily to the people watching them, but to the streamer specifically. And a lot of streamers are professional players. A lot of them are playing on mouse and keyboard. A lot of them are doing techniques that the casual player, you or I, are never going to do.
Yeah.
So catering to them is a bad fucking idea if you want to sell, 100 million copies. But if you're only planning on selling, or you're only, geared towards selling 5 million copies, which is still a lot of fucking games, but okay, cater to the guys that are going to get the word out a bunch. Call of Duty doesn't have to do that shit. They don't need to
Nope.
target their game towards those people, and I would argue they shouldn't at all. As a matter of fact, I would do the exact opposite of what Call of Duty streamers want to do, just because they're not going to shut up about it anyway. They'll probably talk about it more. But targeting a casual person that's going to play maybe 2-3 games a night when they get home from working all day, different than targeting the guy who plays it for 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours a day, the
Yeah.
same thing over and over again. That's a whole other streamer. In the beginning, I think streaming, like YouTube, like influencer economy in general, right? I say that with quotes. Um, it, it started out as the one way you could get an unbiased, raw review of whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's not the case anymore. We are at minimum, we are a year past that date on any major game that comes out, because a lot of those big streamers, when that game comes out, they don't want to shit on it. Not even just that they might have a contract now, but they don't want to shit on it for the next contract, the next thing, when your livelihood. And I'm not saying that like they're all
Hmm.
dishonest or anything at every level. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying though is like we're beyond the point where you can just, you know, take you have to use a grain of salt, period. Now, even if it's somebody that you like and you agree with their takes on whatever, if suddenly they can't shut the fuck up about the mechanical keyboard they've been using for 6 months, Okay.
Yeah, this actually happened. Like, luckily he was, he's obviously been big enough to avoid it. But like this, Max said this, he thinks it happened to him, because years ago Sony sent him a copy to stream of The Last Guardian,
Yeah.
on
And he shit
PS,
on The Last
and
Guardian.
he said he made him sick. Like the frame rate was so choppy. He says I got sick and I couldn't play it. And I'm like, I just didn't wasn't having a good time. Wasn't even really enjoying the game for what it was, but I got sick. And he says I never heard from them ever again. He's like,
Yeah.
so he's like,
That'll
I
happen.
probably got blacklisted or something because I did not have a good time playing that game they sent me, and then they never contacted me again.
It's an inherently political game. It is. There's a sweet spot, which, it's not great because you can't pay your bills with it, but there's a sweet spot where you have a following, but you're not big enough to be in the like target or in the sights of those major companies that will blacklist you. And like in that range, like you'll get a lot of raw opinions, and then that person will grow out of that and they'll become, sponsored by whatever company, so and so. And like, they're never going to say anything bad, true or false about said company. And
Yeah,
it's just that is media journalism, or that was media journalism, just without the disclosures. Any honest streamer, and I think now legally they have to, but any honest streamer, any honest podcaster, put ourselves on blast, are going to be upfront about a sponsorship, are going to be upfront about their
yeah.
relationships with so and so company. But media journalists weren't. Not back in the day. Those magazines and shit.
Oh
Most of
no,
those
absolutely,
magazines, no, not at all.
absolutely not. There's an infamous. You can look up the Driver 3 review. Forget which magazine it was, but they got like an exclusive review of it months early.
It
And
might have
you,
been
you
EGM.
and my well, it was like, and then the whole thing was that they would get it early. They would get exclusive coverage. They would get all this extra material early before anyone else, months before anyone else, as long as they were assured a certain score on the end product.
That's
And the
shady.
game was a piece of shit, by the way, too. Buggy, unfinished, rushed. But
Yeah, I don't know
yeah,
anybody who accidentally bought that piece of
it
shit.
had this amazing early review score and all this amazing exclusive coverage early on because of that because they literally guaranteed that review score.
Actually, I think that might have been PSM in hindsight, because I think I have that particular magazine
Driver
somewhere.
3.
Yeah, I think it might have been
Oh
PSM.
no.
I hate to
Was it?
besmirch my favorite,
Oh
but I
no,
think it
no,
might have
no.
been. Now you
No
got to look it
way.
up.
No,
Um,
I do.
but yeah, to wrap things up, to bring everything full circle, the early 2000s was like the wild west of both media journalism and the internet in general. Sort of what YouTube was in 2011. Um, you just like that time to double down on the shit that was normal back then. Now shows a complete lack of growth or a hint of narcissism to try
Yeah.
and pretend that any normal person doesn't look back at that and go, yeah, that was fucked up.
Fuck, you're right.
It was PSM. Yeah.
PSM 2. Well, it
Yeah.
actually was 3 magazines. Oh no, I'm sorry, 2. It was Xbox World and PSM 2.
Oof. I hate to drag them down because I liked them. I was a big PlayStation 2 fanboy. And thus a PlayStation magazine fanboy. In my old teenage bedroom, I had because they all had their like custom art centerfold that was like a poster. I had like one wall of just all the posters from over
Mm,
the years and shit. I wish I still had that. This was before the streaming days where it was cool to have like a wall full of shit behind you. So I threw them all away when we moved.
oh,
Yeah, and like in hindsight, I'm like, oh, a lot of those are probably pretty rare now. Would have been cool.
would have been Nintendo Power, man.
Bummer. A bummer. I think my brother has all his Nintendo powers. Isn't that crazy?
Do you think he still has the posters?
I think he probably does. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. He used to keep them stacked under his bed when we were kids. Like whenever he was waiting for the next issue to come out, he would just reread all the old issues. It was ridiculous. He's such a nerd for Nintendo. What a loser has all those now. God. But yeah, any final thought on I it's sort of like the downfall of G4 is really sort of the downfall of gaming journalism, because it happened there. It's just that the internet now has made it broader, and then
Well,
also the
and
internet
then
makes you
just
more aware.
the advent of so much technology becoming consumer level affordable, as far as like webcams,
Right.
microphones, audio software, equipment, editing stuff. Like there was times where like Sony Vegas would, no, it's not Sony anymore, but Vegas editing would go on sale for like $20.
Right.
I remember they would like have fire sales for like a week or whatever.
Yeah, it's a huge
And
piece of shit. That's why.
well, yeah, but people
From
snap
an
it up. But
editing
you know what? It'll get you where you're going.
that is fair. I just
It'll
never
absolutely
liked
get you where you need to go. So that's in a good way, because then it led to a lot of people being able to just make their own content. But you're right in the sense of like we're already kind of getting to that point now where the free independent individuals are now kind of very wary about what they say, because that could
Right, sorry.
be that could be detrimental to future coverage and yada yada yada. I mean, right now we're lucky enough that's like we're funded by our patrons, and we have Manscaped. Manscaped doesn't make video games, thank God.
Yeah, right.
They make they make products that we use and we actually like. It's a very simple, for us it's very simple, and very
Yeah,
nice. Because
I
we don't
think
have
that
to
is
sit there and be
something.
like, hey, if you like JRPGs, you should check out Square Enix's Octopath Traveler 2. I love the old games, and just
I don't want to.
feed you a line about, I mean, it's actually a decent game or whatever, but it's just like we don't have to sit there and like, cross the
Pander to the
streams, if
company.
you will.
Although Sony, I'm willing to sell. I'll play The Last Guardian. I need that money for rent.
I don't think they care anymore, because I don't think and we can say this because of who we are. I don't think Sony likes Japan very much.
Yeah,
Just
no, that's true.
Just straight up, I don't think the PlayStation brand of that company particularly likes Japan that much, or working with Japan that much.
we can end on a very positive, just honest, moment where I just tell you straight up, G Fuel is garbage. Don't buy G Fuel. It tastes like absolute asshole. And I can say that because
Whatever we drank at E3 tasted like
it was so bad.
It tasted like melted plastic.
It was disgusting.
There was one that was okay. I was like, oh, that's all right. And then I tried this other one. I'm like, this is plastic.
This is what the fuck? Like that. I mean, look, I can be bought. Yeah, G Fuel comes to me tomorrow and we'll give you $10,000 to say it's not that bad. Like, yeah, guys, hey, wink, wink.
To be well, I mean, they've made a shit ton of other flavors since, and Andrew, that was like fucking 4 years ago now.
I know. I have
4 or 5 years
I love
ago.
G Fuel.
That was like 4 or 5 years ago. Like, that could be a completely different company at this point.
Look, it tasted like unfiltered sweaty asshole.
Okay, there was something worse. And here goes all the 2 sponsors in one we're killing tonight. You know what was worse than G Fuel at E3?
What?
Bang.
Oh yeah, the Bang energy.
Bang energy drink tasted like a fucking foot. Like it.
Yeah.
It tasted like the inside of a gym locker or something.
Well, do you like Monster?
Yeah.
Monster, get at us. But I like Monster and Rockstar. I liked both of those.
Rockstar's okay. Like, do you remember the original Rockstar? It tasted kind of like an old pineapple.
It was. I mean, it was strong. It was like a sour. I don't know.
Strong.
I liked it a lot.
Hey, I'll tell you what I do like. Me and my, and I found out my brother likes this too. Ghost. Because they have a partnership where they have a Sour Patch flavor, Sour Patch Kids and Warheads flavor, and a Swedish Fish one, which actually isn't bad. I got that on mistake. But they also have their own flavors like creamsicle, citrus. Where I'm literally plugging this thing. They've never even heard of us, but they taste good. Okay, Bang tasted like a fucking foot, like I was eating a rotten foot. I took 2 sips. I'm not even ashamed to say this anymore, and I just left it on the toilet paper dispenser in the men's bathroom in a stall. I was like, "This is so bad." I thought about dumping it into the toilet, but then I felt bad for the toilet.
We're never going to be sponsored by them or G Fuel, but
holy God, it was awful. But hey man, I enjoy Monster Ultras and I enjoy Ghosts. They're fucking great. They taste wonderful. I'll get them every time. So killed 2 sponsors, but hey, we made a gain too.
And we should now thank our patrons who allow us to say fuck G Fuel, and obviously thank you to Manscaped who also allows us to say fuck G Fuel. But if you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. Dude of the week was Andrew H. Thank you, Andrew. Someday we'll find out about our matching birthmarks, and our producers for this episode are the Schmidt 1, Tsunami, Kuroi 35, Hyper Viper 89, ZZ, and Online Persona. Thank you, dudes, and we will catch you next time.
Later, dudes.